Hi, everybody, and welcome to our webinar today, where we are lucky enough to be joined by one of our industry experts and partners from Dialpad, Brenden Gretsch. Today, we are going to talk all things CX, and our session is titled CX Innovation That Fuels Business Growth, and it's going to give us a great opportunity to go through not just what some of the reports are telling us in the environment, equally hear some of those examples that we're actually seeing on the ground. In the spirit of reconciliation, Auscontact acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respect to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island peoples here today. Today's webinar will run for approximately 60 minutes, and during that time, with the help of Brenden, we hope the session provides some interesting insights into things that impact CX in your organisation. And also, as I said, we're going to work through some of the findings from the latest Frost and Sullivan report, and then to round off the session, we'll have some Q&A at the end of the webinar. I'm Fran Southwood, CEO of Auscontact and your moderator for today. We'll just run through some general housekeeping with you. Remember to interact with us to maximise the benefit. As you know, there's no need to take too many notes because we will provide you with a copy of the recording and some of the slides from Brenden that you can then refer to at a later time. If you've got a question or a thought or a comment, use the QA button on the control panel or the chat feature. You can ask questions or make comments for Brenden where it makes sense. I'll ask them in real time. So if it's about what he's actually talking about, or alternatively, if it's something more general, I'll keep it for the later part of the session when we have that Q&A. I would say type them as you go along, otherwise you'll forget them. If you're anything like me, if I don't write that great question down, I will never remember what that great question was. So make sure to keep them coming as you work through. If you're listening through headphones or speakers and have any issues, use the raise hand button on the control feature and one of the team will run to you. Hang on, I just need to cough. I nearly made it all the way through. I'm going to stop talking so I can have a proper cough, and I'm going to introduce you to our speaker today, as I said, from our gold partners, Dialpad. Brenden Gretsch is the solutions engineer Dialpad. And Brenden, I left out a very important thing to tell everybody is that as we work through the webinar today, the best question, we always love this, the best question is going to get a bit of a prize. So we've got a gift card to give away as well, and you're the judge. And if you want to be eligible for that, you need to stay on till the end of the webinar. So that's always a fun bonus to have. But Brenden, I'm going to hand over to you to introduce yourselves and get the session started. I know we've got loads to talk about. Can't wait.
Thanks, Fran. Hello, everyone. So my name's Brenden. I'm one of the solutions engineers here at Dialpad. I've been here for quite a while, so definitely able to help you with any questions that may come along the way. Really excited to go through what the topics we have today. So it's going to be really in depth, as Fran said. Feel free to ask in the chat. If it's something that we can answer straight away, we absolutely will. If not, we'll definitely get to it at the end of the webinar. What I just want to go through today is just a few of our agenda. So we're going to go through just a few topics here. We're going to focus on what was mentioned in that Frost and Sullivan report. It does have some really good insights. We're then going to go through the customer experience of what we're expecting today. Once we've gone through that, we're actually going to go in depth into how we can future-proof your contact center. And then I'm going to give you a really good example of one of our current customers who's actually gone through this, sort of change management and updated their contact center to be in a modern, more cloud-based contact center. So we're going to go through the Frost and Sullivan report now. So it is a really in-depth report. I would recommend everyone have a read of it. There's quite a lot of insights into what growth is, how innovation's happening in the space. But what I'm going to go through today is sort of the key insights that were found in that report. So we're going to focus on what we're doing well as in the contact center space, and really where we still need to improve, and sort of little gaps that do get missed along the way, or not missed, but more that we are currently working on as well.
Brenden, we'll put the link to that report, the information that we send out to everybody. I know we show it later on in the session.
Yeah.
But just for everyone's info, we'll put that there so you can access it later on.
Awesome. All right, let's first just look at the key findings of what the contact center or CCaaS are doing well in the space. So contact center as a service, as we know, is a more hosted system. People are still traditionally moving off the on-prem PABX space because there have been quite a lot of large gaps compared to an on-prem system. But especially when this report, as I said, you'll see it was completed at the end of 2024. The contact center space has matured to the point where actually has feature parity with on-prem solutions. So we know at first people are weary of going to a hosted system. Hey, it's a big change for us. Are we going to get all the features we are currently getting? We definitely are going to get that now. If not even more, because the being on a hosted system, it does give you a lot of extra features, which will slowly come through as we go through this webinar. There is initial restraints around having that the hosted phone system, because scalability and reliability initially were a problem, but now with everyone moving to all those hosted platforms, a lot of that has been dealt with, especially around security. Security is, of course, a big problem, or not, big factor in the contact center space, because everything's online now. We need to make sure it's being stored, and people who have access to it need to be, secure. That has largely been addressed, especially with a lot of innovation in the space as well. Now, the big point is, of course, AI. AI was a big topic of the last couple of years, especially nowadays. It is probably one of the biggest competitive battlegrounds in this space. We do know that contact center and AI can work together, but a lot of it, what it can do is, again, around that generative AI space. What are we going to use the Gen AI to do? Particularly, we don't want to replace our agents. Maybe we just want to empower them. There is, of course, a sector where we can be those, repeat questions, things that can have customers have self-service. That's definitely what the AI can do nowadays, where again, we were lacking in the past. And again, around the AI, where are we getting this data from? So of course, we do know we've got data everywhere. How can we bring this into one central management, or I guess a knowledge base, and ensure that it's available for all of our agents? Having it really structured and keeping it organized is, again, where AI, especially in our contact center space, is actually giving us that meaningful value as well.
And it's not surprising that they're those key findings. If you think
Yeah.
about the last couple of years, we've really seen such an increase, not just in visible, kind of end game applications. So there's really strong user case conversations happening. We're also seeing a change in appetite. So early on, I would have said, senior execs in organizations were saying, oh, can you go and, get that thing called AI for us? Now it's kind of settled, and it's back saying, what can it do for us? What are the opportunities that it gives us? But equally, the balance has come from some of the time that's been invested in the narrative around security, scalability that you talked about there. But equally, what does the market need it to do, and how can we make that successfully deliver? So I think the last couple of years have really actually been what have changed the landscape for these four key elements that we're saying, out of the report as saying we've done well. But I think we almost had to go through part of the challenge of the last couple of years to kind of get to that point, because a lot of it was about the unknown, really kind of building a greater maturity in understanding, but equally in application.
Yeah, definitely. And I've seen with even other products, like having AI injected in them, at first it was like, okay, this is a cool tool. But again, as it does mature more, like you said, the applications it can do is definitely transforming the whole space and the industry in general.
Yeah.
Now that we've talked about what's doing well, there's of course still gaps in the market. So here's the findings that they've found for what can definitely be improved. So I have focused this on specifically Australia and New Zealand, because again, that's a market. But again, this is not just restricted to those markets. This is being affected on a global scale. So again, there are some gaps in regulatory requirements because of where the AI may be hosted. This may lead to data being sent off-site. Maybe it's not secured or stored in the space where we want it to be. Because again, we do know the data is being stored securely, but some customers do have requirements where it cannot leave a specific region or a specific data center as well. We do know that CCaaS vendors should invest in enabling consumers how they're going to manage their knowledge base. People do have all that data, like we said, but where's it going to be secured? This is sort of comes onto the third point as well, where it's being pushed again onto the IT team. They've got enough things to do, right? We really need to give the IT team a really easy system so that it's not something that's getting on top of already their day-to-day work. They're really good at managing a network. They don't necessarily want to also manage a contact center. It really needs to be made simple that anyone in that space, no matter if you're just a user or even just an admin of the team, can utilize the phone system to actually make it do what they need. So definitely some key points not isolated to everyone. And maybe a slight hint, Dialpad does invest in this area. So we'll come to that as we go through the slides as well.
I think you're right though, Brendan. Some of those areas are still probably why we're not seeing adoption leap to the same levels that people probably expected in the Australian market. You touched on the regulatory and the compliance requirements, and obviously there's a real difference across sectors and verticals in relation to what are some of those regulatory requirements. And if we look at some of how organisations need to interact, not just as government, but with government, you'll see, think of banking, think of superannuation, think of insurance. There are requirements written into legislation in many instances. Equally, there's things that have come out of incidents that have occurred over the last sort of 5 years, including things like royal commissions, et cetera, that actually mean there are other things that need to be considered when looking at what AI can support and what it can actually kind of cover as far as that regulatory environment. But if we think of the Australian market and we think of the Digital Transformation Office and kind of the role they're now positioning themselves with in as far as what is that ethics framework, what is the role of AI, and how do we collectively build some assurance around how that's actually be managed, because again, that regulatory compliance limitation means that they're left on the back foot. Because as soon as something goes wrong, right, we're all going to jump in. So there has to be this thinking, and you touched on there around best practice and thought leadership. There's definitely still this need to identify and really call out those use cases where we're testing some of those barriers, working with government and regulators to really understand what we can and what we can't, what we need to adjust as vendors in the market as well.
Yeah, definitely. So again, of course, nothing's ever going to be perfect, and it definitely, once we start, and again, adoption is increased, these sort of gaps will definitely be improved on quite quickly. So again, that's another benefit of being on that hosted system as well. Change and adaptation is very quick along the way.
And what do they say? Today's the worst it will ever be. For many of this, today is the worst it will be. Tomorrow it will be better. The next day it will be better, et cetera.
Yes. There's always, yesterday was always the best time. The next best is today.
Constantly improving very rapidly too.
Definitely. Alrighty. Well, next thing we're going to focus on is that customer experience. So in general, what's actually happening in the industry? What are we hearing from our consumers? Not just the users of the system, but the voice of the customer. So of course, the first and most common use case is the digital mindset. So what is a digital mindset? What we're used to in the contact center space, or what we used to be used to, is customers trying to look for a phone number to call in, right? Nowadays, people are very busy. They don't tend to want to sit on a phone call. And what might that be? Well, everyone's busy. They want to be able to work while they're on a call. Maybe they just want to text into a system, or even potentially email. So they want to have their own way to connect with your agents and actually communicate the way they prefer. Their motivations, again, usually that time focused. They're busy. They want to allow for asynchronous communications, right? A phone call is typically both ends of the conversations need to be fully engaged all the time, especially with people got so many things to do. It's not something they can do straight away. So we've sort of got, the sort of questions that, what are your customers saying? How are they trying to contact you? Do they want to contact you through SMS, WhatsApp, or even video, right? Voice is not the only communication nowadays. Once we actually have communicated with the customer, where's this data going? Is this actually linking into the CRM systems that you're using? How are we actually going to interact with it correctly? Once we've actually done it, are they all being logged correctly? Like I said, yes, they may be going into a central database, but how are we ensuring that the agents that they're using that data has actually got the relevant data to actually work with? And again, are the agents or the customers, sorry, being given the self-service options that they want? They don't necessarily want to talk to a person. They just want to talk to a bot. They just want to do it themselves. So definitely what we're saying in digital mindset is that digital transformation. Phone call, definitely there, definitely has a use case. But again, let's give them some options to interact with our systems the way that they want to. What we'll go on to next is, of course, then the outcome of those engagements. So again, a customer may be contacting you for multiple of reasons, right? Could be a new sales inquiry, could be, requesting support, or even potentially requesting a refund. How do you actually know that's what they're calling about? Without having to go through and listen to that call manually, or even do you have a way to listen to that information? We do need a way to be able to achieve this through, again, that customer's preferred channel. Again, we also have those outbound calls. There may be a case where we can't actually resolve that call in the first call. It does require a callback. How do we actually know that those calls are getting through and that customer's issue or request was actually being resolved and we're just not being sent to, a dead end? So we've got no way of actually contacting that customer. So again, another set of questions that you can ask. Are we actually customers getting that first call resolution? How do we actually know? Is that data again being put in the right place? Are customers able to communicate with your agents in the right amount of time? We may potentially have an SLA that we set for our team. Are we actually meeting that SLA? Are customers being transferred or sent to different systems instead of just being solved that first time? How do we know all this? So again, really good questions that potentially can prompt internally. And again, check with your current system, maybe something that we can actually look into changing as well.
Brenden, it's really interesting, those questions you're posing.
Mm.
I speak to a lot of different organisations who are quite challenged by that conceptually, FCR. How are they measuring it? Because there are so many, it's like all metrics, right? Whilst there's plenty of ways to measure, there are so many different kind of applications of counting rules and definitions that, let's be clear, you can kind of make it say anything you want, but actually, if you are truly customer centric, what does that look like? What are you using the data for to actually help you ascertain what is that best outcome? I'm talking to a few at the moment who are saying, what are you seeing? What else is happening around, first contact resolution? Because we need to do and think differently about it. So again, how do we use the data? Because it's all there. How do we connect it? And how do we make sure it's giving us that holistic view of customer and customer journey?
That's probably a good point. Yeah, holistic view. We want a full insight no matter where it's coming from and how's it linking in with other data that we're using as well. Because traditionally, raw data is just number of calls, right? But nowadays, people wanting more information. They want to deep dive into all that info. Next thing we need to think of is then agent efficiency as well. So again, there's always good intentions behind all these applications that businesses purchase and set up for their team. But sometimes that just leads to app or what some other companies call it tab overload, right? Too many screens they're having to jump to, too many windows. This window only does one tiny thing when that links into another system, right? It's very confusing and again, can lead to burnout for our teams. Another serious impact is, of course, that business intelligence, right? How are we bringing all this data, like we said previously, together and ensuring that we're keeping on point with efficiency and the brand values of our team. So again, how are we ensuring that our team or our agents are being efficient as possible, right? Having too many tabs, as we've said, probably not the best. We want to try and bring it into that single pane of glass. Are agents to be able to get the data they need easily? Again, having different systems, they're not unified. They may have half the information in, the CRM and then another one in a knowledge base that's just on a Word documentation. That can get really confusing, especially for even new people in the team. They're trying to be onboarded. It's a bit hard to say, hey, you need to go check on this system for this question, but then potentially over here just for this one. Why can't they be brought together in one system? And as we said, switching between tabs, really confusing, especially if they're trying to deal with the customer as well. We don't want to say, hey, hold on, my system's slow. It's just my browser's about to crash. I've got too much going on. It is putting a lot of strain, especially nowadays on those agents as well. And as we said, there's good intentions behind what they're doing, but sometimes it's just a bit too much. The last thing we're going to go to is, of course, demand scaling. So as we all know, during the pandemic, some businesses was really high, where everyone ramped up like crazy. But of course, unfortunately, we did have others that needed to ramp down. So how is our systems nowadays able to deal with this demand? Can it scale up when we need it to? Do we have surge events where, hey, we need a temporary amount of staff, let's put them on, make sure we cover that gap? And then what happens when, the surge is gone, when we need to downscale for that size? Flexibility in technology is really important. Again, if we're sort of putting them in a point where they're forced into a section, it's putting a risk on deployment. People don't want to make that change because they're unsure of what can occur. So we do need a system that can scale in those what we call boom times, as well as scale back down during those lull times. So again, my last set of questions, guys, do we have a system that can scale easily? Are we being locked into a system that's not fit for our purpose, whether that's our current needs or even our future needs? Can we adapt and respond to risk easily? And again, how do we respond to that shrinkage as well as those surge events as well?
Brenden, if you think about all those, so if I think about the last four, slides that you've actually taken us through in those questions, are actually really good ones for people to go back and actually go through the process. Again, your organization will have different components of customer, and you'll have different needs and different, dynamics within your customer group. But actually, this is a really important component to actually critically assess each of these from those different lenses. It also makes you think about what matters to our customer. And sometimes we're, still kind of going on what we just anecdotally think matters to our customers. We might not have asked them for a while, but equally we have almost an organizational position on some of this stuff. We've said it many a time in webinars, in sessions that we have. There are very few people that wake up in the morning and want to call your organization X, very rare. So by the time they do call you, because they've exhausted in many instances other avenues, or they are that frustrated that it's the last part of, kind of their challenge that they're trying to overcome. So again, sitting down and actually looking at those different components, demand scaling, customer experience, the mindset, your employee component, really kind of challenging yourself on those helps you kind of come up with, well, where is it that we have gaps? Where are we doing okay? If you take that Frost and Sullivan component, what's working well, where are the gaps? You could almost perform that same analysis and critically look at, people, process, system against each of them and really think about where could we have further discussions? Where are we not quite hitting the mark? Certainly as a starting point, that CX is changing as rapidly as everything else. I don't necessarily know that we as organizations are shifting as quickly in our view of CX.
Yeah, definitely. And again, if we don't have the right questions, we may necessarily, get to that point. So having these list of questions does help internally start you on that right track as well. Now, why did we bring up these list of questions? Well, we're here today to tell you how we can future-proof your contact center. So of course, coming from that on-prem and that change management can be scary, but this is where the team at Dialpad can always assist you guys as well. So do you guys have that digital mindset, or is that something you're really looking forward to? Well, today I'm here to introduce you to Dialpad, and what we have is our TrueCast system. So Dialpad is an all-in-one contact center, uh, as well as UC management system, where you can bring all the systems you need into one. We have, of course, our support, so our contact center, which allows you to bring your Gen AI agents, your workforce management planning into that one system, as well as helping your sales team get all the insights and data they need, as well as giving them that AI insights and playbooks as well. On top of that, we've got our Dialpad Connect, which brings in our voice and video as well as messaging, so internal and external communication into one, all powered by Dialpad's proprietary real AI system. So we're not utilizing any third parties for this. This is all built on Dialpad tech. And that means that all of this data is all ingested into the one system, including your own data as well. So we mentioned that tab overload, no longer needed in Dialpad. It's going to have that single pane of glass for all of your agents' needs as well. As we go along, you'll see how we can also improve other areas of that contact center as well. The first one I want to bring you to is our CSAT. So how do we get the voice of that customer? Well, we know that people don't like receiving surveys at the end of the call because, again, as you've said, they've exhausted all options and they may be frustrated. So we're not getting that true insight in terms of that CSAT. Well, with Dialpad's AI CSAT, this is going to allow you to get results over 100% of your calls, going to continually learn from those conversations as well. So because it's using our own AI system with your live transcript and the other features that the agents will have access to, it can then improve and then also give you, as you can see here, the reasons and results of those CSAT. So we're no longer guessing, why are we getting 1, 2? Do I need to go through and try and figure out what the actual customer is thinking? No. Dialpad's AI will give you all that insight. And as you can see, it's able to pick up what's going on. There's issues with pricing, could potentially be something wrong with my agent's tone. We potentially need to change how that's happening in the context as well. And as we said, we're able to get that over 100% of calls with approximately an 87% accuracy. So really high benchmark. And again, a lot more insights into that team as well. Next one you have is our AI agent as well. So as we mentioned, we have that knowledge database. It's all falling on IT. Well, with Dialpad's AI assistant, we can bring that knowledge base into the agent screen. So they have everything they need. They have their own 24/7 live chat. So we know maybe potentially the team, they can't get a hold of their contact center manager. And I had a really good statement from one of our customers. People aren't going to be scared to ask a bot the same question multiple times as they may to their contact center manager. So again, they have that assistant right on their right-hand side. It can handle large volumes of data, whether that's coming in from your calls, could be potentially those fixed documents, so those Word documents in different systems, it's all going to come into one. And it's going to then give you the data that's missing. So again, maybe the team has some gaps that they're unsure of, and we don't even have that information in our knowledge base. Don't have to worry about that. It's going to flag you, and you can even get reports on the data we're missing, so we then can improve our agent efficiency as well.
Brenden, I know that was a bit of a tongue-in-cheek. It's an agent that keeps asking the same question. The reality is, though, that's super rich intel, right? For a team leader, for a coach, for any other sort of support role, actually having visibility of that gives you a real opportunity to actually think about, how am I delivering information? How am I training? How am I supporting? Why is it that this person needs additional, needs to ask the same question 50 times?
Yeah.
And how do I help them? How do I actually help them differently? So I think, there are so many different components to when you harness the data and the multitude of, structured and unstructured data that actually helps you make different decisions. And I think, we've made such progress when it comes to the amount of information available. I think we are still catching up in relation to, what do we now do with it all? Some organizations are doing it really well, and they probably are starting with this small proof of concept kind of approach. To, we've got this type of data, we think it's going to tell us these things, this is how we're going to approach it, almost setting up sort of, little mini projects within their environment to try and really think about, how do I use the data well? But probably what this is really highlighting is that ability to have the connectedness between the data? What is the whole story telling us? So then the so what and the now what, it depends on, organizational appetite, timing, funding, all of those normal things. But it really is the first step to really, bring this all together and let you make conscious decisions. Again, I go back to the 4 different components of questioning that you showed us earlier. You could almost come up with that with each of the sets of data that you have. Look at it through that employee lens. What can we do with that? And really kind of nothing's off the table, which is why the technology is one thing, but I think actually that is supporting an environment of, I don't know, I call it bold curiosity, right? Where people are kind of challenged to really think outside the square, nothing's off the table, really get creative with what this can do as far as your customer experience and your customer interactions. And I think to me, that's one of the most exciting things, that all of the AI supportive technology is underpinning its ability to take it to somewhere that, it's not the tech alone that takes it there, right? It's the thinking and the brains of the humans there that actually say, well, what does it mean for us? How do we use this to, be more successful or drive better outcomes, whatever that is. But it's got to start with the visibility and the connection of the data.
Yeah. And I was saying, if it's everywhere and they're getting overloaded, it can get missed because people are used to looking in one space and they may potentially forget that this area forgets where it is. So it's having it all in one spot, as I said, it makes it useful. And then you can actually see, hey, maybe this is outdated, or we're no longer using this, or again, where are the gaps? Next thing we'll focus on, and of course, the main one is that scalability, as well as the security as well. So Dialpad uses its own dual cloud architecture. This means we have our own in-house data and not using it off-site or third-party systems, so we can ensure that that data is secure and safe. And as you can see, we do have regions all over the world. That means the data can be stored where you want it to be, and it means that your agents can access the system wherever they'd like. So again, maybe you are just an Australia, New Zealand-based business and you want to be within Australia. Well, what happens if you want to expand globally? How does that system work? Well, with Dialpad, it is just an auto-scaling system. You can have teams in Japan or even New York. That system will bring it in one spot. Don't have to worry about setting up new systems, different licenses, a new server over here. It's all done automatically. Then this is all backed by, of course, our industry standard security systems with our ISOs and our SOC 2. So you know that the data that is being stored in our system is secure, is compliant, and it then allows you to actually that system. This, again, supported by Dialpad, meaning we own our own system. We've built it from the ground up. So you know that's going to be supported by us. If there's a problem, it means we can fix it. We're not going to point fingers to other companies or other providers, say, hey, they built that, I'm sorry, you have to wait. No. It's built and maintained by us. Something goes wrong, we'll own it and we'll fix it. But of course, we can provide really high uptime as well as automatic failover. So even if something happens, just know that your system is always going to be available for you. What we'll focus on now is, again, a very good example of one of our most recent customers. So we know it's always good to say, hey, we can do this, but how about we look at someone who's actually recently just made this change? So one of our most recent customers, they're called Disrupt Digital. They are a large QA agency. They do a lot of digital marketing. So everyone may need to do some marketing themselves. And again, it's something that's important, but these guys are making over 50,000 calls a month. Their current or previous system, was unable to handle that. And as well as when it did make those calls, they couldn't get any information. So yes, they're making a lot of calls. They couldn't actually see, was this leading to sales? What are the insights that we're missing? What do our customers actually want without actually having to look at those calls one by one? So with Dialpad, they were able to utilize our live coaching features as well as our AI CSAT to not only assist their agents while on the call, whether they get those tricky questions or again, maybe they're just insights to that particular customer's needs. And then on the back end, they were able to utilize as the management team, what are their customers saying about us and where's the gaps in our system? What they're also doing, as I said, is using our video platform as well. So they are using the full Dialpad suite. So just because things are just on a call doesn't mean it stops there. On our video platform, we get all of that information, that real-time guidance, those AI insights into their video meeting platform as well. So data is, of course, important to them. So this data is then being flowed into their own system as well. So that way they can match it up with the other systems. So as we said, we don't want that tab overload. They want all that data in their central system. So we're able to push all that data there as well.
Great example, right? There's some
The
big
product
results.
side, just a little bit robotic and
Oh,
so yeah, it's his
someone's
first time around. It's good practice.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, we'll go mute there. I was just going to say really, really strong results, right?
Yeah.
Did they start with anything in particular? Like you've called out there, they're using the QA feature. So, actually listening to all the calls, I'm assuming, or a greater number than they would have manually. You're then using that to do different activities with them. So you talked about your coaching program. Is that real-time coaching? Is it AI digital push as far as support while they're on the phones? But are you also then taking it that step further and this organization's using it to build into how they coach, how they train? Like they start with a small component and then expand based on what they were seeing? Because I would imagine if you tried to go all in with everything, number one, that's a lot of change, not just for you as a leader to try and actually navigate what the outcomes are, but equally for your people. So can you give us a little bit of insight into, what you've seen work well as far as those approaches to kind of stepping into this type of thing?
Yeah, definitely. We do know any type of transition is, a big change on the teams that are using it. So with Dialpad, you can actually start with just a couple of modules or even none of them. They can use it, copy for like, and then slowly build on top of it. So this customer, they did just start with the basic Connect license. And once they could see that the teams were happy, everything's functional, they then started moving on to what we call our Dialpad Sell license for those inbound and outbound sales teams. This is where we could give them access to those real-time live coach features. So again, that's able to assist them while they're on a call. And then they slowly...
The live coach, that's when
Yes.
I'm on a call, I'm asking something, but it gives me AI in the background. It's giving me prompts based on what I could ask next or what I ask or those sorts of things.
Definitely. So it assists you with not only maybe objections that the customer brings up, but then also it can provide you a list of questions that you may need to ask or would be recommended to ask for that client's need. It then provides you a bit of a tick box to ensure that you've actually asked those questions, but then it also captures the customer's response. So that way you have all the when you're reflecting back on that call as well.
Right. Okay. So if I take that one step further, when I'm building out the solution, so again, we're going to make sure our knowledge management's right. We're going to make sure the hygiene of the system is, kind of up to what we need it to be. So there's a fair bit of optimization organizations need to do in the setup of, getting ready for these sorts of things. But if I'm then analyzing the data on those prompts, what I thought was important might not necessarily be what drive outcomes. So this is actually a way to test, kind of what we touched on before, some of that age-old thinking that we say if we manage an interaction in a particular way, it will drive an outcome of, this is really testing that, right? It's really challenging organizations to rethink what truly drives performance. And, I've worked with different organizations where their perception of what is good is not necessarily what is good on paper as far as, what do you think good is? Is it, you're going to get the outcome, the sale, the whatever. And it is really important to challenge that. So it sounds to me like this gives that as an avenue as well. So you can actually look at what truly is connected to an outcome, successful, whatever by your definition, and really critically analyze, or AI can do it for you, what were the drivers of success? And actually you need to stop thinking it's X, Y, and Z because it isn't.
Correct. And funny you say on paper, because not just this customer, others I've seen, they still rely on a piece of paper for those objections, but objections change over time. Customers change, their needs, things aren't fixed. So having it in a system that is adaptable and can change with that customer's it is definitely important to not only this customer, but others I've seen in the space as well.
And how quickly can you adjust things in the system? So, you touched on before, because it's cloud, you've got much better responsiveness to make those adjustments in real time. But I guess where you're working with customers, is it that you're kind of hands-on? If they need something changed, you guys just work with them to change it, and you test it, and then that's kind of the process? Is it kind of that fail fast type approach to get the right outcome?
Definitely. So QAs, they can actually change it themselves. So our whole system is designed to be self-service. So you don't need to wait around. Yeah, don't need to wait around for IT as we saw in the report to make those changes. We don't want them to rely on it. But of course, we do have teams available 24/7, where if they are getting stuck, or again, they just someone with a little bit more knowledge or who's done this before, which is again our team, they can definitely just call upon us, and we're always there to help with any questions or any changes that they need to make. So it is live and in real time. So once you make that change, it will then straight away update for that next call. No need to wait for the next server update or data push. As soon as you click save, it's done.
Love that. So are you seeing organizations also then use the data that comes out of, say, the support prompt, the results component, all of the metrics together? Are you seeing organizations take that and build it in successfully to how they recruit? What are they looking for, and how they train? So that whole onboarding experience, are you seeing that successfully done much? I'm hearing people talk a little bit about it, but I haven't yet seen anyone really use the data to rethink that strategic approach to people and workforce.
Yeah, definitely. Again, I think it's more that they never had the data they needed to make those changes, right?
Yeah.
So now we're giving them all the data they need to actually adapt to it. So again, as you can see with the QA piece, we're not only giving them information they need across a breadth of calls, right? Before we used to just get the really unhappy or the really happy customers, but now we're getting everything in between, and we're also going to explain to you why this has occurred, so we can make those changes, as we said, in real time, not waiting for someone to call in and complain. Let's do it now. Let's ensure that everyone has that good customer experience.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a positive for the industry. Not waiting for someone to go to an ombudsman or a minister for organisations to go, oh gosh, this is not going in the right direction. It takes it back to being in control and really actually supported control with the data and what the data is telling you. I would challenge organisations, though, that they really need to ask those framing questions. What does success look like for us? What are we prepared to invest for the outcome? There's a real kind of setup component that needs to be really overt and really visible when they're planning some of this stuff. And some of it might be that it needs to constantly be reviewed within it. If you look at your example here, I'm sure at different stages, what they thought was going to happen is totally different to what did actually happen, or even the utilization of the new technology and the systems that you guys provided gave them insights to think, actually, we could now do this, and leading into things that they hadn't necessarily expected to be able to do. So I'm sure it's quite iterative as far as how it goes. You talk about the scorecards. Are they mostly around sort of performance?
Not even just performance. So again, they are very and highly customizable. So we can use them for performance checking, ensuring that our agents are giving that customer value that we want. But we can also use it for adherence as well. So maybe there's sort of key checkpoints that we do need them to do on a call. Our system's just going to automatically tick them off for you, and then again highlight that to the team leaders and managers and business owners as well. So
that might include some of the regulatory components that you touched on earlier. We have to give this warning or this. Yeah.
Correct, cool. Definitely.
So you can build that all into the back end.
Yes,
and it does
as well as present that to the agent as well. So it's not just a hidden requirement that we may need in the background, we're going to present this information to the agent so they're also kept in the loop.
Definitely would expect that that sort of safety rail would enhance compliance. Very quickly identify where it's being ignored.
Correct.
Not waiting for the 2 phone calls that we listen to annually once a month.
Yes, we want to find about it now, not, as you said, 3 months later when someone's put through a complaint to the ombudsman. So all of this data can again send alerts to the manager or the supervisors in real time as well. So as you probably noticed, the key trend is we do everything in real time because we want to have the data, make those changes and adapt straight away, not once we've gone through a monthly review cycle.
Do you find organisations are electing or making very conscious decisions about what is given in real time? So by that I mean, in an environment with a whole lot of change, when we know humans, generally speaking, are often change resistant, giving too much of some of this information can be somewhat overwhelming. I know some organisations that are making really conscious decisions not to turn some things on. So really audience selective as far as who gets things in real time. And I go back to the comments you were making about employee efficiency, engagement, etc. There are definite connections with over application of data and information that can have the contra impact on your workforce. So there really is a balancing act. And again, it probably goes back to leaders really needing to understand their people and the stage that their people are at. And maybe it's different depending on tenure and all those sorts of things. But I'm assuming you're seeing that with your customers, that they're making very conscious decisions about the provision of information and when it's available, when it's ready, who it's ready for, to kind of minimize some of that potential negative impact,
Yeah, definitely. As I said, we can adapt and sort of add processes or add things, hide things from agents or even teams if they don't want it all at once. Because as you said, people are change resistant. But once we get there and they start learning and utilizing these new features, they become more accepting of these things. So it definitely is something we can slowly roll out. We're not saying here, have it all at once. No, let's sort of the building block approach. Let's build this floor, then we'll build the second layer and go from there.
And I promise this is my last question. But, I just love this stuff, right? So if I think about an organisation that's going knee deep in this, we're open to kind of connecting the dots and really understanding what it can do for us. The time frame is it that this takes 12 months to get right? Is it that actually you can have it in there and actively adjusting over a 3-month period? Like, what does it look like? And I don't mean what can it look like, what typically can it do? What are you seeing on average to get that optimized position? Because again, we see organizations sign up to this ROI kind of dream. Instantly you're going to have all of this stuff and it's going to make a huge difference and everything's going to be changed. We all know the reality of, there's a bit of a tail when you build in the different components to when you'll actually see benefits. So if I think about a continuum, what would you say you're seeing organisations, collectively implement, and then when they will start to see some results from that, but again, in a measured kind of manner. And I'm sure, what do you say? How long's a piece of string? It'll all be different, but kind of what's the approach most people are taking?
From what we're seeing in our average of timelines, of course, it can change with different businesses. We're seeing results within 6 weeks at most, and that's including from deployment to the agents utilizing it, as well as making those adaptations and changes. So it's very quick to get that information. And again, once that's already there, they can change and get their results and have that in whichever database, whether that's our system or even their CRM system, basically straight away. So it's not a 12-month, 2-year process that we're used to with those old on-prem systems. It's very much a couple of weeks to a month or two at most. So
To actually see the results in the system, yeah. So again, it probably goes back to the importance of that discovery stage and
Yes.
really understanding intent that I'm assuming they work with you guys on, or they kind of jump. So there's an investment that is about what are we doing and why are we doing it? You know, down to those basics. Yeah, cool.
So, yeah,
Definitely
we're very much
different
involved.
to old school. Hey, you know, you think
Yes.
implementations, and look, some implementations will still be big and vast and complex and time, take quite a bit of time. But as far as those iterative changes, it's so nice to see the ability, to kind of roll out things and really see results, particularly if you've got a really sort of strategic timeline as far as what you're going to do and when you're going to do it. Love that.
Definitely. Yeah. Again, benefits of that hosted world, right? On-prem,
Yeah,
it was
yeah,
very
yeah.
fixed and very rigid timeline. Now it's very much adaptable. All right. I think that's it for my slides. What we're going to do now is a bit of Q&A. So
Okay. Well, we do have a question. It was from when we were talking about some of the components under your, the questions that you asked yourself, but it's from Rachel and it's specifically about first contact resolution. So randomly question, what are some of the different ways that you've seen FCR or FOR, FQR, whatever you want to call it, calculated? Because there's plenty of different ways. Rachel says that what they do in their organisation is ask customers to be part of an NPS survey. What else have you seen? So I'm going to let you go first. I mean, and a lot of people, Rachel, use the surveys, the NPS. A lot of them use that. There are quite a few, and they're all quite. I know this will sound harsh, but they can all say what you want them to say, right? Is the challenge of SCR. But yeah, Brenden, what else do you see in the environment as far as the way people are actually determining first contact resolution?
yeah, there's many ways. So again, we can keep the traditional approach of sending out that survey, but of course, we now have wrap-up codes which allow agents to actually utilize and based on the customer's response. But now we've even got our AI that can pick up on the customer's response, right? We can have the agent ask a specific question, but of course, the AI is there to actually understand the customer sentiment and realize like, hey, customer saying that everything's complete, we're happy. It's definitely reportable. So.
It's interesting you call out the completion codes. I remember my time of managing very big workforces using classification or completion codes, and it was so dependent on the individuals actually doing it that we would have said the data was very loose as far as accuracy, because we always had, that beautiful, the beautiful component called other as a category, and other just was it was either the first tab down or the catch-all. Yeah, so it's interesting. Rachel, we've also seen plenty of people do repeat calls in a given time frame. This unique number didn't call back within 3 plus or minus a couple of days. Again, that's really loose because it might be that they've called but for something totally unrelated. So if you were just using old school approach to data, that's a really blunt instrument approach, but it is what a lot of people use. But we do see the majority of people use a combination of, kind of the resolution codes and the NPS to really say, if FCR was achieved. But I think the opportunity now with AI, to me, that's one that really kind of opens up. Rachel's got a bit of a follow-up. If implementing an AI approach, what kind of uplift or improvement have you seen? And I'll probably call out that where we have seen organisations, before you go in, Brenden, where we've seen organisations implement AI in a number of things, like, we talked before about quality assurance. We know that when people suddenly add AI to the mix, their figures go way down. I would be surprised if FCR is not the same, because what it is showing you is everything. But it's actually for a couple of months, it gives you the intel and the insights to let you think differently about, because it's not that it has changed, it's just that the data is giving you a more complete picture. But Brenden, you've probably got much more insights around any uplift or change with FCR, with the AI lens across it.
Yeah, I think it's because it's giving you more data to work with, right? As I said, we're used to just one or single point of data. Because you're allowed to, or you're able to get it from more points, you can easily adapt with that. So
Stacey's just put something in there about, wouldn't it be better to allow FCR to decrease to measure the impact of AI? I don't know that it's that you would allow it to decrease, it's that will decrease because you're actually assessing across 100%. But what it will do is give you visibility of the real picture, as opposed to the picture we've seen up until now, which is just part of the picture, part of it. But yeah, it's really interesting. And Stacey goes on to talk about quantify the data, but get insights into the percentage of calls. Yeah, where AHT increases and adjusts KPIs to suit changing technology. Funnily, you call that out, and we're seeing quite a number of organisations just use AHT for planning, like as far as KPIs. And really, once they've got the ability to utilize tools to drive data understanding and data insights, they're actually rethinking what good looks like for their people and what those KPIs need to be. And it's funny because one member we were talking to a couple of weeks ago was saying, well, it's really hard. We've got all this information now with all the AI implementation we've just gone through, and it's doing this to AHT, and we're just trying to fit it into kind of how we've always done metrics, like success metrics. And they sort of, as they were talking, they suddenly went, you're going to say, why are we doing that? Why does that matter now? Because we've got data that can actually mean we can think differently about what KPIs are right. So yeah, I think what it does open up is a more contemporary way to assess success and performance in our people. So, and I would say it's not just about FCR that actually provides that opportunity. Rachel, I hope that helps. There's another question here around email integration, and I think one of your slides actually touched on that earlier, because again, it's just unstructured data in another format, isn't it?
yeah, we have a
but what's
full
the integration?
Yeah, so we have full omni-channel approach. So not just voice, we have email, we have chat. So our system allows customers to interact with your agents in any way they like. So definitely we do have an email integration.
Awesome. Brenden, I'm mindful of time, and I could talk about this stuff all day because I love it. Thank you. Thanks for the session today. I love hearing about, again, some of the intel we're seeing through the thought leadership and the industry reports really are helping us kind of challenge our thinking. So I love what you've kind of highlighted today around, the Frost and Sullivan report, but equally then taking it into, well, what does that mean? Where can you start? What are some of those framing questions that can help organizations, really kind of think about where they're heading? AI is the tool that will support you or part of the solution. But actually you need a whole lot of strategic thinking to, kind of frame out what it's going to do for you. You've got to know where you're heading as far as what your organization's trying to deliver before you then retrospectively think, well, what's the tool that can do it for me? You've got to really know those goals. So I think what you've taken us through today has been great. And, I always love a good customer example. So knowing, what's worked for somebody and how could it work for others. So thank you for today. Thanks everybody for coming along. We'll send out information in the session to everyone that was registered, and we'll let Brenden choose the best question, and we'll let you know who that was. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.